This podcast is brought to you by the Dunfield Retirement Residence, a casually elegant retirement community located at Yonge and Eglinton in the heart of Midtown Toronto. Customized living options complement your independent, active lifestyle. Learn more at thedunfield.com.
That's what it sounded like Monday in the hallway of the Schneider Children's Hospital in Petach Tikva as Ofri, Uriel, and Yuval Brodutch got a surprise visit from their beloved dog Rodney. The trio tumbled at the floor, hugging and kissing their pet. I think it's a Rhodesian Ridgeback. And you might have heard 10-year-old Ofri calling the dog Sweetie, in Hebrew, Hamoudi. The hospital released the heartwarming video of the pet therapy session the day after the 3 Brodutch kids and their mother, Hagar, were released from captivity at the hands of Hamas, 51 days, and they were reunited with her husband and their father, Avichai. Now, many of our listeners may know the Brodutch family's story because the oldest child, Ofri, attended Camp Gesher this summer, a Jewish overnight camp in Ontario. And we've had her uncle, Aharon Brodutch, on. He's an Israeli-Canadian scientist who lives in Toronto, and he's been advocating for the Canadian government to do more to help free his family and all the 240 hostages. Aharon Brodutch returned to Israel just before his brother got the call that the family was on the list of hostages that were about to be released, and he was there at the hospital for the reunion.
They had lost a lot of weight. They were still, they hadn't showered. They did not look good. It was very first moment. Just seeing them was hard.
I'm Ellin Bessner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Wednesday, November the 29th, 2023. Welcome to the CJN Daily, a podcast of the Canadian Jewish News, sponsored by Metropia. When the Brodutch family's Kibbutz Aza home was attacked early on October 7th, Ofri, the oldest child, was about to celebrate her 10th birthday. We knew her birthday cake remained in the fridge, untouched. Her father, Avichai, threw on his uniform as part of the Home Guard and was shot trying to defend the community from the terrorists. Her mother, Hagar, and all 3 kids were dragged out of their home and taken across the border into Gaza. Later that day, back here in Canada, Aharon Brodutch learned the terrifying details in a phone call from his distraught brother Avichai, who soon launched a one-man protest outside the Israeli Defense Ministry to get Israel to make rescuing the hostages a priority rather than wiping out Hamas first. The effort sparked a worldwide campaign to get the hostages freed, including here in Canada, where Aharon Brodutch and others visited with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and spoke to large crowds at events in Toronto and Ottawa and Montreal. While other hostages who've been freed have been revealing details about what their captivity was like, including forcing them to watch horrific videos of the terror attacks and eating just 1 meal a day of rice and bread, Aharon Brodutch won't get into specifics for security reasons of what his relatives endured. But he joins us from Israel just before heading back home to Canada to describe the events leading up to their release, how everybody looks, and what will happen to them now.
Well, it's an honor to meet you and to speak with you. Mazal Tov, and thank God that you're coming home with great news. Tell me exactly, when did you get to Israel? How long have you been there?
Yeah, so this was my second visit since October 7th. I got here, I was here for a little over 2 weeks, then went with my brother to Washington, D.C. to meet the Qatari ambassador, came back to Canada, went to Ottawa, and in Toronto, met a bunch of people, including the Prime Minister. Then last Sunday, my mom texted me and she said, "Can you come back?" And so I came back. My plan was to stay here until they got back. But when you buy a two-way ticket, you put a date on it, and the date I put on is November 29th. And yeah, I mean, I didn't need to change tickets. So yeah, very, very happy.
Was there sort of a procedure? Maybe you can tell us about what the procedure is for these hostage families.
Yeah, when I got here, there wasn't a deal. There was nothing. I got here and we were brainstorming on when are we going to escalate the demonstrations and the protests that we're doing. And a day later, we heard a rumor that something's happening and we should hold off, not to ruin anything. That day, we spent in Bnei Brak, going to many of the top rabbis in Israel, and we met some pretty incredible people. They were very, very supportive and absolutely amazing. And 2 days later, we knew that there was a deal going on, and then we just held tight. And so initially they said there's a deal, they're going to announce names, and plans kind of changed. We heard everything mostly from the media, although my brother did have a person communicating with him regularly, and she's an absolutely incredible person walking through this journey. And so the details were kind of, bouncing around. It got delayed by a day for some technical reasons.
Your family's actual release or the whole
entire deal. So
we're still talking last week. Okay.
Yeah. And then on the day they released the first batch, what they did was they called everyone to tell you if you are on the list or if you're not. My brother received the phone call. The person on the other end had to deliver, not good news. I don't want to say bad news because, there was still hope for the next days. Same thing happened on the second day. On the first day, we were, kind of shocked. Everyone was expecting their name to be called up, although obviously only, less than a quarter of the people with children were going to have their names announced. Second day was, again, you're not on the list. Every day it got longer, and then the third day, there was a delay and there were issues. But then at 2 a.m., my brother got a phone call. And even before the person on the other end started talking, he already knew. He had been contacting her for long, and he could just by the tone of her voice immediately he knew. And so that day, extremely exciting. We went together to Kfar Aza, to his house, or his old house, to get stuff. So that the kids have like their pajamas and things. We also went through his entire day fighting and saw the place where he got injured. And then we got to the hospital. We waited in the hospital for a few hours because there were issues with the release that I'm not actually sure what the issues were. We weren't like looking at media. We were mostly, trying to pass time in a different way. We decided that we'll kind of wait in a different room, the family, and just let my brother meet his wife and kids first. I'm sure that was, I know it was like extremely emotional and very exciting. And then we came in, and it was just good to see him.
What hospital is that?
So it's Schneider, it's Children's Hospital. And they have a new wing that they just built, and they're using that. They have amazing doctors, including quite a few that have done their internships or specializations at sick kids, and also people I knew from Toronto from their time. Pretty incredible facility. They're taking good care of everyone.
Let me take you back to the hospital. You were in another room. Who else was with you waiting? Your mom? Your dad? Who was there?
My mom and my brother's wife's parents, so my brother's in-law.
Their in-laws, yeah.
And her brothers and sister.
What are you allowed to bring with you for the kids? Is there sort of like a protocol? Can you bring schnitzel like Ohad had or other things?
We were able to, but they kind of told us, look, don't bring any food because we want to control what they eat, just in case just for medical reasons. And so we didn't.
And what did you see when you saw them? Describe your memories of first seeing them after your brother went in and you were able to go.
They were functioning. They were talking. They could tell us about their experience that day, and they could tell about experiences before. We were very worried that they might be in shock or, behaving strangely. They weren't, they obviously their situation, they didn't look great and they're traumatized, but, they're functioning.
Were they together the whole time? Were you able to find out if the three of them were together? And was it with the little girl that was there, they saved too, or what?
So the family, so my brother's 3 kids and their mom were together. I'm not allowed to talk about other details for security reasons, but I can confirm that they were together.
Nobody was wounded?
They're all
you said they looked
physically okay.
Physically okay. So what happens to them now? Like you said, there's a reunion and now they're in the hospital. What's the next steps for medical treatment and follow-up? How does that look?
So they were checked by good doctors, the best doctors. They're having, very careful. Everyone's very careful, but they're okay physically. They're going to be released as soon as they want to. Now it's not about it is a hospital, but it's also like a safe environment for them, socially and psychologically. And so they have to decide when they leave and where they're going to. At this point, they don't have a house. They're refugees in their own country, but they're displaced. And, they certainly for the next, let's say, little while, they have quite a few choices on what they're going to do next. Longer term, it's unknown when there hasn't been a decision on how the kibbutz, what the kibbutz is going to do. Certainly, if they decide to go back to the kibbutz, that's going to be a very long process because right now it's destroyed.
Hey, so you said that you were able to go back to Kfar Aza with him I thought it was off limits, that whole area right now.
So it is mostly off limits, but because he's a resident, we were still able to go in to his house.
Is the house,
it's not an
is there any way that they're going to be able to salvage it and live there? No.
So their house is actually completely intact. There's a few bullet holes from the Israeli soldiers who came in to sort of clear the house. But, what happened if the Hamas people just came in and just took his wife and his kids. They didn't touch anything. They stole a couple of valuables, but because his safe was open.
Like what?
Oh, just some jewelry, nothing serious. But the rest of the house was fine. His house was somehow miraculously, wasn't pillaged.
And you went with him. How was that seeing it for you? Because
for me, it was a shock. I mean, the room they stayed in, seeing that, and then seeing Kfar Aza, his house was very lucky. Other houses, quite a few were burnt down, and the stories, that. The neighbor on that side had been murdered, and the neighbor on the other side had been murdered, and that other place, people were, there's lots of story. In his story, he left his house that morning. He's part of the Kitat Kolenut, which is like the local, how to describe it?
Home guard. Home guard.
Yeah, it's like the local home guard. They're supposed to defend for about 20 minutes before the military arrives. And usually they're supposed to defend against, a couple of people. But just before he went out, Abigail, the neighbor's daughter, came knocking at their door. She was full of blood. She saw him. She got scared. She ran away because he was in uniform and wearing a vest. But he grabbed her and took her in. And, she's now back with the family. She came back with the same group of hostages. And then he went to fight. He didn't have a weapon. All the weapons are in armory. So he ran to the armory where he met the other people from the guard. And, big battle. He described every piece of that battle. They fought very bravely. Most of them died. 4 people died basically instantly next to him. But they're trained to, defend. And they were shocked by just the amount of it just turned into complete chaos because they were not trained for something like that.
When you say for our listeners, Abigail is the same girl that turned 4. Our listeners should know that the Americans, she was the American Israeli girl, and has sort of become the face for America of the hostages. And so she was, just so our listeners know, we know, but just in case they didn't know who she was.
Yeah. And, both of her parents were murdered.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Are they going to stay with your mom if that's like temporarily now, or does the government give them like a place for a while?
Yeah, the government will give them something. They can stay with my mom if they want. They're still undecided.
What did you say to them when you first met them, if you can remember?
I just, I didn't need to say anything. I just sent them. Yeah, it was just so emotional. I just hugged them, and Ofri, who she was in Toronto, it was just so good to see her. One of the first things I asked her is, "What do you want to do now?" And she said, "I'm going to Toronto."
Do they know? Are they aware of what the world and their father and you and your wife and the Canadians did to keep their story on the front burner? Or do they not yet know?
Now they know. Yeah. So now they know. Specifically about Camp Geshe, I told Ofri. I showed her some photos and some videos. And they, we're slowly showing them. There's a lot of stuff that was done, and so they're slowly getting to see a lot of it. For my brother. Also for me, but to a much larger extent for my brother, not being able to share those experiences with his wife was so hard. You're going through this incredibly tough journey, and you're meeting prime ministers, presidents, and people like that, and taking photos with them, and you can't send them to your wife. And for me, it was like, I'm taking like photos of my brother in a suit, which like has never happened in the history. And I can't send them to his wife. So it's nice to finally be able to share those.
So you left Canada. You're coming back now, but there are other hostages still. Is your journey done for now? What's your plan?
100%. The journey is not done. It's become less personal, but we can't be even on the day we receive the phone call. You can't be completely happy. You can't. You always know that. If it's your family, it's other people who are not getting that phone call or getting the opposite phone call that day. And there are people who knew that they're not going to be, their family's not going to be released. The men, the soldiers. We have to continue fighting. They're not an amusement park. It's not a hotel. It is very tough. We have to get them out of there as soon as possible. Fight is definitely not over, and we're already on it. My father and Hagar's father, they're on media all the time, repeating the message, and we're just going to continue.
Tell me how your parents' health has been impacted by this stress since October 7th.
Well, I mean, our story began very hard because we thought everyone had died. My mom, she collapsed completely. My father is just emotionally, it's been extremely hard. But then we started fighting, and we've just been so focused on the fight. But it's been draining, and everyone's health has to be reassessed, and especially my parents who are older. It has not been good. But now, the change is immediate. Even from when they said we signed a deal, and most of the children are going to be released. It was the first full night's sleep, in 2 months. So hopefully we're all going to be better now.
Is Ofri going to go back to? Sorry, is Ofri going back to Gesher next summer, or we don't know yet?
I hope so. She said she's planning to go. Yeah.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of the CJN Daily, episode number 472, sponsored by Metropia, integrity, community, quality, and customer care. Thanks for listening to the CJN Daily. And don't forget, Giving Tuesday was yesterday, but we accept your contributions anytime. Go to the cjn.ca/donate. The link is also in our show notes.
The Dunfield Retirement Residence offers customized living options to complement your independent, active lifestyle. Welcome home. Welcome to the Dunfield. Visit us at thedunfield.com to book a personal tour.